This should be a short video just focused on the myelin sheath. The previous lecture you learned about glial cells, so this is going to be focusing on two of them, the two that make that myelin sheath. So if you remember from the previous video, oligodendrocytes make the myelin sheath in the central nervous system, and Schwann cells make the myelin sheath in the peripheral nervous system. Most images you see of a myelin sheath will show the Schwann cells in the peripheral nervous system. So I'm not going to say more about oligodendrocytes right now, besides to remind you they are the cells in the central nervous system that actually produce that myelin sheath. So that would be in the brain and spinal cord. So in this image here, you'll see these are the Schwann cells, so you'd know, hey, this neuron and this axon is in the peripheral nervous system. So you've got the different parts of the neuron shown here that you should know by now. These basic cell body, dendrites, of course, a nucleus. And then this axon is the long part where the message travels in this direction, an electrical impulse to talk to other cells. And the whole mechanism of that we'll get back to. So this myelin sheath is basically insulation around the axon. It's wraps of cell that insulate. So this is what that's shown, looks like from a cross section, which is a useful way to look at myelin, is see the cross section. This is an actual electron micrograph, so a real image, and you can see that kind of thickness. The cell membrane is here, right? There's actually a cell membrane that surrounds that axon, and then the myelin sheath is actually much thicker than that. Here is a schematic of it. You can see that Schwann cell is wrapped around multiple times. That actual wrapping of the cell creates the myelin sheath. So what that's going to do is provide insulation to the neuron, and when we get back to nerve conduction, so the passage of that electrical signal, this will come back to this idea of myelin. Surrounding it insulates it, kind of like a hot water pipe that you would coat with insulating it. The other piece that influences conduction is the diameter of the neuron itself. There can be different diameters of the axon. So those are two factors that influence how quickly an electrical signal is passed from the axon hillock down to the axon terminals. Myelinated neurons carry faster impulses. And you might think, why don't we just have this everywhere in our body? So there are unmyelinated neurons as well. Not all of our axons are myelinated. This is kind of bulky. It takes energy to produce these cells and maintain these Schwann cells or oligodendrocytes. So myelination only is present where it needs to be, so where we need to have faster impulses than other places. So we'll get back to this conduction speed once we talk about electrical signals. For now, though, I do want you to know the idea that what myelin is, what forms it, and then generally what its function is in terms of increasing electrical conduction. So I think that should be consistent with what this says here. Define myelination and describe its function, including comparing and contrasting how myelination occurs. So really what the cells doing that are in the CNS and PNS. Here's the two cells that do that. These are just some different ways of saying it. So myelin sheath, same thing. Oh, I forgot to say it. So the myelin sheath gap, this is also called the node Ranvier. So this is what was shown here that I forgot to mention. This gap between these different Schwann cells is a gap that's going to be really important when we talk about neuron conduction. So this gap is present here in between the separate cells. This is also called the node of Ranvier. So now I think we got this covered.